Ebony's creativity.
Hey everybody, I'm Ebony. This is Ebony's Creativity. Thank you so much for joining me here on my channel. First and foremost, I want to say Happy New Year. Thank you to all of my subscribers for really helping me out in 2021. And if you're just now stopping by, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Happy New Year to you all. Peace and blessings is my wish for all of you and for myself. And before I hop into this flip, I just want to say a few things. So I've learned from selling furniture to people that many people get as connected to the story behind the piece as they do to the piece itself. They'll see something that they really love and then is really, really cool for them when it has a backstory. So I've learned to start telling people as they've purchased furniture from me that their piece does have a story and to come check it out on YouTube. I normally say where I got it from or how much I paid for it, and they can see the process that their piece went from trash to treasure, and people really like that. So the piece that I'm going to be talking about today and flipping is not for sale. I'm going to keep it forever, and that's because it did belong to my late Aunt Alicia, who I really, really loved a lot and I was very close to, and she is no longer with us, but I do have this piece that I can have in my home and remember her by. So as other people get attached to certain pieces of furniture or things in their home, I'm attached to this piece because it is the only thing I have of her besides the memories in my heart. So with that being said, in her house, it was kind of, in my house, I think it's kind of like a more mid-century industrial kind of vibe. In her house, it was definitely like a retro Art Deco kind of vibe. So I kind of try to mix our two styles just so it would fit in my home, since that's where it lives now and I'm going to have it forever. So I wanted to do an ode to that with kind of some cool lines and a bow. She had a really kind of she was a sweet lady, but she liked to cut up and have a good time. So I wanted to do something a little bit funky. And so I hope I have done this piece justice. You can let me know how you feel it turned out in the comment section below. But without further ado, I'm going to ask you to subscribe to my channel if you have not already. Thumbs up the video if you like it. Let me know if you like hearing kind of the backstory, more in-depth stories about the pieces that I'm going to get, and I can start to include that in the videos. And with that being said, let's hop right on into the flip. Okay guys, so here is what we're starting out with. It looks a little bit rough. I think somebody has already tried to refinish this. It was a bar in her home. I use it for a different purpose in my home. It lives in my foyer, so I will use it for shoe storage right inside my front door. And here's a little tray that it came with. It opens up in case you want to serve. So it's a pretty cool piece, but I just don't have a use for a bar. And I love the color in the inside, so I don't want to change that. But that outside has been through some tough times. So now we are going to start working to refinish that. So my first step is going to be to remove the hardware on this. And it's just held in by one screw. It looks like it had different hardware at some point in time. You can kind of see that there are two holes. So who knows what the original hardware looked like. But I'm just going to reuse the ones that are here because I'm trying to keep the piece pretty true to how it was. I looked for maker's marks and didn't see any on this piece. I didn't see any stamps, any names, any insignia from a company or anything like that. So if you know what this piece originally would have looked like, leave me a comment and let me know. But after I finish my wipe down, I'm going to use this gold spray paint and just go ahead and spray those and let them dry. And I also have my piece of 120 grit sandpaper and my orbital sander that I'm prepping. But before I start any sanding, I am going to be patching with this plastic wood. So as you can see, there's some gouged out areas on the legs. There's more than just this one that I'm showing, but I kind of just want to show you me filling this one, and then I did the others the exact same way. So I'm starting out using this putty knife to kind of put the plastic wood on, but sometimes I just like to go in with my finger. I find that that's a better option for me sometimes, so I do it either way. It really doesn't matter. As long as I get it on there and get it on in a thick layer, then I'm fine. So you can really do either way. So like I said before, somebody has tried to refinish this piece before. Thank God they did not ruin the beautiful inside. and I'm able to kind of leave that as it is. But as far as this outside portion, it has a really thick layer of some kind of really thick top coat on it, and it wasn't applied evenly, and it just really looks a hot mess. So I'm happy to be getting this off, but this did take a long time to sand. Not to mention that this top pieces were all veneer, and whoever refinished it before did blow through the veneer in several spots. You can kind of see down toward the bottom, and I blew through the veneer some as well. So after I finished sanding, this is the best I could get it. I was not concerned about removing all of that stain on the front because I will be doing a dark color. I'm trying to keep it as true to how it was originally, like I said, but I was very happy with how the top cleaned up, but I didn't spend any more time blowing through veneer on this front because it was just taking forever. If you are watching this to learn how to sand, let me give you this pointer. You can kind of see here how this kind of has like a fuzzy, kind of a peach fuzz texture. You will get that on certain types of wood when you use kind of a coarse grit sandpaper. 120 is not that coarse, but it's kind of in the middle of the range. So after you would use a coarse grade, you would go back with something, a higher number. So I went from 120 to 220. The higher the number, the more fine of a sanding job it will do. So if you have some really, really tough stuff to get off, you'd want to probably go down to like a 40 or a 60. If you're just doing kind of a overall cleaning up layer like what I'm doing now, you could use like a 220 or a 400. So this should knock down all that peach fuzz, and it should also get rid of a little bit more of that dark stain that was remaining. Also, since we are sanding on top of veneer, this is a safer bet. This will prevent me from blowing through so much of the veneer into the plywood pieces underneath. So the higher number is better if you're a beginner, but hopefully you can tell how some of that peach fuzz is knocked back the more times I go over it, the smoother it appears. And you can also see me rubbing over it with my fingers to make sure that it feels smooth. So this is definitely the way to go to smooth out that peach fuzz texture if you experience that, or if you are a newbie working with veneer. Up next, I'm going to go in with my simple green, and I'm going to give this a very, very thorough cleaning all over the whole thing. So after cleaning, I brought this inside where I like to paint, and I kind of placed down a design, just a little bit of a linear design. I didn't want to really cover this in paint, but I do have some areas, as you see me pointing to them, where I have blown through the veneer while sanding, and while somebody else who has refinished this has as well. So I kind of tried to make my design so that it would cover those areas. So I'm going to be using this stain, which is wonderfully named Ebony. It's just a black stain. I'm going to be using this white Waverly chalk paint and also some black Waverly chalk paint. And I will be using my Old Faithful Klingon brush to paint. If you've watched the past few of my flips, you know that I always use this. I prefer hand painting to spraying paint on, especially for small pieces like this, because I like to paint inside and I don't want to have to set up a tent and blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff just to spray paint. So I really like to hand paint. And I've not found that I need another brush. I have only had and only used this brush and brushes from the Dollar Tree. So this brush was kind of an investment, but I really love it, and I'm so glad I made the investment. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to do good quality flips, but a few things that you'll want to splurge on, and a good paintbrush is definitely one if you can afford to. If not, you can start out like me with Dollar Tree materials. Now, if you want to do a project where you're painting with taped lines, I do have a video on my channel about how to get the most crisp paint lines, and I will link it in the description box below. I am not doing that method here just because of, one, I have really good control and a steady hand, and two, I don't think it would be necessary on this because my sections are so large and I can just cover up any mistakes with the next layer, so I don't have to get it perfect. I think as this goes on, you'll kind of understand what I mean if I'm not explaining it right now. But yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and cover this section that I have mapped out with white. And I'll be moving on to the next color when I finish this section. But I also do have a video. If you're not sure what I mean when I say veneer or the different kind of products that furniture is made out of, I do have a video about that as well on my channel, and I will link that one as well. So I'm trying to do this for people who just like watching flips, people who are learning, people at all different stages. So hopefully you will get something out of this video, no matter what stage you're at. Now I'm just going in with that black chalk paint to cover up the bottom part. And I really wanted to just refinish this, just have it all stained in the ebony color and call it a day. But because of the repair that I made down here at the bottom, this would have just shown through stain. Even though the wood filler says that it's stainable and paintable, it just doesn't come out right with stain. Not this particular wood filler. You can recommend another one to me if you have one that takes stain well in the comment section below, but I just don't. So this is what I use, and it doesn't take stain well, and I was afraid that you'd be able to see the areas where I blew through the veneer, where the previous refinisher blew through the veneer, and these areas that I used the wood filler on if I just tried to stain all of this. So that was the sole purpose of me going in with paint. But I did want to kind of keep this as true to how it was when my aunt had it. But that previous refinishing job, my mistakes, all the patchwork, it just wouldn't allow me to stain. So that's the reason why I came up with doing this kind of a design. While I'm waiting for those painted sections to dry, I am going in with the Ebony Stain. As you can see, it is very dark. Ebony is black. Everybody's favorite song to sing when I tell them that my name is Ebony and Ivory. So if you keep that in mind, then you'll know that ebony means black. So this is a really, really black stain. I think this is the look that the original refinisher was going for. I'm not quite sure what look they achieved. It was very splotchy, as you saw before. So I kind of did want to pay an ode to that. And I kind of wanted it to have at least a portion of the original look that it had when it was in my aunt's house. So that's why I chose to kind of mix paints and stains. It's not something that I would typically do. Unless it was like a table and I stained the top and painted the bottom, but this is kind of like on all on one surface. So it's not something that I would typically do, but I decided to try something new and have a little fun. Like I said, my aunt liked to cut up and have fun, and she had a funky type of personality, really spunky. So I wanted to try to put that into this piece as well. If you are watching this video to learn how to stain, notice that I am going the same direction as the wood grain. So you don't see me moving from side to side, you see me moving up and down the piece. And that's something that you want to do if you're staining. You want to do kind of steady motions in the direction of the wood. You also see me with the detail brush getting into the cracks. I was not able to get into those little small surface areas with the towel. My finger would not fit in the crack. So I had another little brush on standby just to make sure that I saturate all of the areas with stain. There's nothing worse than thinking that you're finishing with a paint or a stain job and you step back and you notice areas that you miss. So don't want to do that. Kind of just want to do long strokes over the area that you're staining and go with the grain of the wood. The darkness of the color that you're going for, as well as how well your wood is absorbing the stain, are the determining factors on how long you leave it on. As you can see, my color is dark and absorbing pretty well, so now I'm just wiping back excess. Here's how everything is looking after my first coat of paint and stain are applied. In this white area, you will see some points where I've got splatters. That is okay. The thing that you would not want to do is start trying to rub it or wipe it up or get it off while it's still wet. What you will find is that you will cause it to smear and you will create a larger issue. So the key with this kind of thing is just to wait for it to dry and then sand it or paint over it, which is what I plan to do. So here's just an overview, and now we are going to be moving on to the next step. So at this point, I've applied 2 coats of paint and stain, and I have removed my paint. You can see there's a little bit of bleed through. The lines aren't 100% crisp, but that's okay because I have another layer of painting that I'm going to be doing. So I'm just reusing the same painter's tape, lining it back up, and I'm going to be putting it back over where it was before. And now I am going to be going back in with this gold spray paint, and I am going to be completing my design with that. I did place my painter's tape back just a little bit to make sure that the fuzzy edges were exposed, so that I can just go right over those with my spray paint and cover them up. So now that's what you'll see me doing, just applying the spray paint. I have a bunch of boards and scrap wood pieces that I found around my craft room to go ahead and cover up everything very well that I did not want painted. So between the tape and these little makeshift barriers, I should be just fine as far as not messing up the design that I've already done. But it's very important that if you're doing multiple colors and painting off sections, that you wait for the first layer to completely dry. You will also want to make sure that you have plenty of patience. I did not move my barriers until that first layer of spray paint was completely dry. So when it was dry and I was able to move forward, I did do so. And again, I just kind of kept my method the same, placed my boards down and pressed firmly against them to make sure that nothing was going to bleed through. I wanted this part really, really precise so that all of my lines that are meeting up with the spray paint would be very crisp. Now, you can see how this spray paint is applying. I really did not like this spray paint at all. So if you need a gold spray paint, I would not recommend this Ace brand one. I would stick to the Rust-Oleum. That's my favorite gold spray paint. The color is prettier, the sprayer is better, and it just applies much more smoothly. So if you need a good gold spray paint, try the Metallic Gold by Rust-Oleum. That's my personal fave. So here's how this looked after 2 coats of paint, spray paint, and stain. And now I'm just going in and finishing up, fine-tuning, making sure my lines are really crisp. So I'm just going in with my brush, which is probably too big to be doing this, but again, I have good control over this brush. And I'm just going in and cleaning up any areas that I see fit. So as far as my finishers, I have 2. I'm going to be using this wipe on poly, which is oil-based, over the oil-based stained. And I'm going to be using polyacrylic, which is water-based, over these water-based paints. What you would not want to do is put a water-based top coat over an oil-based stain, because it's going to cause bubbles, it's going to look terrible, and you're going to be very mad because you're going to have to start all over. You're going to have to sand it all off and repaint. So it's very important to know if your material that you're painting with is oil or water-based. That way you can pick the top coat accordingly. You'll want them to match always. Another very important tip that will prevent you from having to start over after you've finished painting and got into the final step, which is applying the top coat, is that sometimes these poly top coats can leave a little bit of a haze on darker colors. So you want to mix in some of your paint with your poly before you apply it. Doesn't have to be a ton of paint, just a little dab will do ya. Sorry, my hand is in the way, but I'm sure you can tell that I'm just kind of stirring these two together, making sure that I get them mixed somewhat well. So after I've mixed those together pretty well, I'm just going in with that mixture. And as you can see, I'm applying it with a foam brush. This foam brush is from Dollar Tree, so you don't need anything expensive. But what you do want to do is make sure you give nice, long, clean strokes. I go over it once, kind of to get the poly on, and then I go back over everything in as few strokes as possible, just to smooth everything out. You don't want to layer this on. You don't want to try to do 2 coats worth of coverage in 1 coat. You want to kind of take your time with this and make sure that you apply it nicely and in a uniform way. And you want to kind of take your time with it. And once you're finished with the first coat, let that dry completely. Come back and sand with a high grit sandpaper. So maybe like a 400 or 220. And then do another coat of poly in the same exact way. That will give you the optimal results and will give you a durable finish. Waiting until you get to this point is definitely not the time to cut corners unless you'd like to start all over. So be patient with it, let it dry properly, sand it if you need to apply another layer, and apply it in a uniform direction, and you'll have a good top coat. Here I am taking my oil-based top coat, so the rub-on poly, and I am using that to get as close to that gold as I can and pull back. This would have been a lot easier if I did not have painted and stained surface, but I'm just going to do the best that I can. What I don't want to do is get any of this on that gold. So I'm just trying my best to avoid that. I'm getting as close as I can with my hand, and I'm just going to have to fine tune it if it looks bad in the end, but I do not want to get any of this on that gold area or on the white area. So I'm just taking it slow and applying this in a uniform direction with a lint-free cloth. At the point that I'm applying this top coat, this has been left for 2 days to dry, but you can still see some of the stain coming off as I'm wiping. I'm okay with that because my stain is very dark and it's not changing the way that it looks, so that's fine as long as it looks good. But I would recommend, if you see your stain color, particularly if you're doing a lighter stain color, if you do see the stain color start to wipe off, it means that you have not wiped off enough excess when you were staining, and you want to wait for it to dry a little bit longer so that it's completely absorbed into the wood. Or if you're feeling daring, you can just keep going like me. Mine turned out fine, but I definitely would recommend giving more drying time if your piece is indicating that it needs it. As you can see, this poly is absorbing in certain areas faster than others, so I am going to be doing 2 coats of this, but here's pretty much how it looks after the first coat. As I said before, I will be using this for shoe storage because I have a billion shoes and not a billion places to put them. So this is really convenient, and it fits perfectly into this small little nook right by my front door. So I will be using it for shoe storage, and maybe one day I can put it back to use as a bar, but for now it's really serving me well right here as shoe storage. So you can see me neatly stacking my shoes. And without further ado, here are some final finished images of this piece. Let me know in the comment section how you think this turned out. Normally, I really love all the pieces that I do, and I wanted to knock this one out of the park, but I'm not so sure if I love it. So just let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Luckily, I will have it forever, so if I decide to refinish it, I can go ahead and do that at a later date. But hopefully you at least were able to get some tips on some of the techniques from this video. Let me know what you learned, or if you got anything useful out of this video. Leave me a comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have the time, please select another one of my videos from the choices on the screen or in the description box below, and keep watching. Thank you so much. Bye guys.